Just getting into board games? Or are you looking for the next addition to your shelf? Here in today's video, we're going to take a look at my most anticipated games coming out to retail and fulfilling from crowdfunding in 2023. Now, as a quick disclaimer, I just want to say that a majority of these games are from crowdfunding platforms, but I do expect them to hit retail as well this year. The reason for this being is that a majority of these publishers nowadays are using Kickstarter or GameFound, BackerKit, or various other crowdfunding platforms as pretty much pre-orders. And a lot of these publishers already have games out on the market at retail. With that said, I do suggest that you check in with your friendly local game store just to see if they have any games available for pre-order or if they will be receiving any of these games later down the road. I would also like to mention that the board games shown in this video are either games that I have pre-ordered, backed, or will be purchasing at retail sometime after they release in 2023. Moving on to the more fun bits, this video will be separated into 3 sections. Number 1, we'll take a look at games that have been delayed. So games that should have released sometime last year or maybe sometime beforehand. Second, we're going to take a look at new additions and reprints. Pretty self-explanatory. And third, we're going to take a look at the new of 2023. Within each section, the games will be announced in chronological order for the most part of when they'll be released. I will give you a brief overview of the game as well as put the release date on the screen. Timestamps will also be provided down below for you to check on maybe a particular section that appeals more to you. Now, with that said, let's dive in. Do you like collecting resources like clay, ore, wheat, sheep? Do you like city building, road building? Do you like donkeys? For this first game, I'm not sure if any of those resources are involved, but there will be a town to build, there will be routes to build, and there will be donkeys. Hamlet, the village building game, is a bit of a cutthroat economy game where the players are all working towards building up their home from a hamlet to a village. And this is done through building a church at the center. The aim is to be perceived as the biggest contributor by the time the church is built. The biggest appeal for me is the resource collecting and Catan-like medieval setting. While there aren't any dice rolls or route blocking, there is still a potential competitive meanness to the game, without the randomness caused by dice rolls and the inefficiency potentially created by road blocking or trading embargoes found in Catan. Now, this game was meant to deliver and has delivered for the most part in 2022, but it's still making its way to some backers. Based on their most recent updates, for us here in Canada, we can expect to receive this game somewhere by the end of January or end of February, which is good news. I'm still very much looking forward to this game, despite the delays. This next game comes from the creative minds of Serious Pulp. It'll be their second game in their lineup of cooperative, narrative, and exploration storytelling games, with new mechanics and more streamlined gameplay. This game is the 7th Citadel. The 7th Citadel takes place in a post-apocalyptic medieval fantasy world, where the world has been ravaged by these city-devouring worms. And the only thing that can stop them are these magically infused plants and trees that need constant tending to. This game plays as an open-world game where pieces of the map need to be explored and are revealed to you as you enter new locations. In this game, you play as a gardener who tends to these trees and then realizes that mowing the grass and plucking the weeds aren't really your thing and what you want to do for the rest of your life. So you decide to escape, but find that the grass isn't always greener on the other side. As you explore the world, you'll find that you can affect everything that's in it based on the choices you make, how you converse with the inhabitants, and how you react to events and situations. Your objective is to uncover the secret that has plagued the world, rightfully called the Collapsing Lands, and build up a city that will be the beacon of renewed hope. The 7th Citadel is a standalone sequel to its predecessor, the 7th Continent, which has been given a lot of praise for how it handles exploration within the game. Now, the 7th Continent has been notoriously known for how cutthroat and punishing its gameplay can be. What Serious Pulp hopes to do with 7th Citadel is to focus more on the exploration side and less on how mean and difficult the threats are. The 7th Citadel was one of the first games I backed back in 2020, and it was expected to release in May of 2022. With that said, I would rather game developers take their time to iron out the story and the mechanics so that by the time it gets to us backers and hits retail, it's a perfect game. There is no official word yet from the designers and creators, but I am looking forward to this game hopefully releasing some point this year. This next game is another sequel, but for Monolith's epic war game Skirmisher set in the Greek pantheon mythos. This time, we're going to be taking a look at Norse mythology. In Mythic Battles Ragnarok, 2 to 4 players control different gods and their armies to wage war against each other in various scenarios spanning the 9 realms. The variability is near endless, as you can mix and match the units, heroes, monsters, and gods you would like to make up your armies. There is even a Ragnar pack that allows you to play as some of your favorite characters from the hit TV show of a similar theme. Not only is this a standalone game, but you can also combine it with the previous game, Mythic Battles Pantheon, and have the 2 mythologies duke it out. Monolith plans to release other mythologies covering ancient Egyptian and Japanese lore sometime down the road. But before we see any of those, I hope to see the production and development of Mythic Battles Ragnarok sometime this year, as it was supposed to come out in June of 2022. There are 2 space-themed 4X games on this list. Fractal, Beyond the Void, from Board Game Inc. is the first one, and it is potentially playable in 2 hours. Fractal Beyond the Void is made up of asymmetrical factions, Kemet-style battles, but with ways to upgrade your cards, and a game board that changes states throughout the game. I haven't played it yet, so I won't be able to compare it to other 4X games such as TI4 Eclipse or Empires of the Void 2, but it sounds super fun. Fractal has the typical 4X trope of players trying to control and gain power of the galaxy or universe that they are in, but unlike TI4 and Eclipse, it promises to do so in 2 hours, and there is a module that you can incorporate to turn this game into a legacy campaign, similar to what it sounds like to Scythe. So in summary, Fractal Beyond the Void is a 4X game, plays in under 2 hours, doesn't use dice for combat, has a campaign. Where do I sign up? Now this game has only been delayed for a short while, as it was expected to release in December 2022. And unlike the previous games, I'm not too sure this one will make it to retail. With that said, however, always check in with your friendly local game store. They may have pre-ordered it. And if they don't, you should be able to find the game on Board Game Inc.'s website. Number 5 in this section is a 1 versus many game from first-time designers Studio Midhall. Now very quickly, a 1 versus many game is a game where one player is up against the other players who actually team up against this one player. And this can involve various things. Maybe you're trying to find this one other player or somehow defeat them, which could involve battles with dice or card play. Now, just to compare it to another game that has come out very recently, Mind Management, or Mind MGMT, is another 1 versus many game where one person is essentially a psychic spy trying to bring others or recruit others to their cause. And everyone else is working together to try and stop that one person. Beast will have a similar mechanic, but with more of a monster hunting theme. One player will play as one of the many beasts, each with their own unique ability. The others are hunters, trying to find and slay the beast before it does any more harm to the people that inhabit the land. I'm looking forward to trying this one out and seeing how it compares to Mind MGMT. Based on the comments on crowdfunding, this game might be released in March or April of 2023, which would be roughly a 7 to 8 month delay from its original delivery date. The next 2 games in this section are RPG games. This first RPG draws some inspiration from classic 80s films like The Neverending Story and Labyrinth. And there's also some D&D inspiration there as well, in terms of the types of characters that you can play. This will be the second game that takes place in a world developed by Hatchling Games, who have worked closely with the deaf community and their local D&D community as well. This game is called Overisles. In Overisles, you play as teens who are gifted with extraordinary powers and must prevent the destruction of the kingdom. Not only will you be questing along with your friends, but you can also learn sign language along the way, either British or American. Based on updates from the crowdfunding campaign, the sign language tutorial videos should be completed around March 2023, and the physical copy should start delivering around April 2023. I'm excited to try this one out, and I know a specific someone who is as well. The second RPG in this section is a bit more of murder mystery scenarios that you play out, and it will combine themes from worlds of Murder, She Wrote and H.P. Lovecraft. In Brindlewood Bay, you play a group of elderly women, members of the local Murder Mavens Mystery Book Club, who help the authorities solve murder cases in a picturesque New England town. Over the course of their investigations, they become aware of a dark occult conspiracy that connects the cases, and will eventually have to face that conspiracy in order to save their community. Now, that description given by the publisher, as well as the artwork, just speaks exciting, but cozy as well. The digital copy of Brindlewood Bay made its way to backers back in September 2022, and it still hasn't been confirmed when the physical release will happen. Now, I wasn't able to back this game initially, but I'm hoping to either find it on retail or through some other medium. Have you ever done one of those icebreakers where you're asked, if you were stranded on an island, what items would you bring with you and why? Well, this next game isn't going to ask you any of those questions, but it will strand you on an island and give you items. Robinson Crusoe: Adventure on the Cursed Island was initially published back in 2012, and Portal Games is releasing a new edition that adds miniatures and a scenario book that adds a tutorial playthrough. Within this adventure book, there will also be other scenarios of varying difficulty for the core game and the other expansions. In Robinson Crusoe, players will have to survive by building pretty much anything that they need. They will also need to find food by foraging or hunting, fend off wild beasts, and adapt to the inclement weather. But that's only just scraping the surface. As you explore the land, you'll make new discoveries, and you may find some lost level secrets. Hopefully, they're not as disappointing. This game has been known for being difficult to get into and challenging, which is why the scenario book with the guided tutorial has me intrigued. In one of the crowdfunding campaign updates, a delivery of April 2023 was given. Fingers crossed. So not only is this game delayed, but it is also a new edition of a previous game, which transitions nicely into our next section. In this next section, we'll be taking a look at games that will have either a new edition or reprint or a combination of both with expansions that will be coming in 2023. Let's take a look. First up is the big box and expansion release of Moonrakers that add more cards and modules as well as a Titan-sized box to fit everything currently available for the game. Moonrakers is a sci-fi deck building and negotiation game where players are mercenaries completing contracts for prestige points. The first to 10 will win. Throughout the core game, you can upgrade your ships and crew members and negotiate with the others to complete contracts. While you can make alliances, agreements are not binding and anyone can be at risk of betrayal. The newest expansions add even more cards, contracts, various modules, and other options for deck building. This edition of Moonrakers is set to release in March 2023. If you can't find this game at retail, you should also be able to pick it up from the publisher IV Studios website. Ever play Civ? Well, the mind behind the board game adaptation of Sid Meier's Civilization, Glenn Drover, has designed another Civilization board game that plays in 2 hours or less, which is 2 to 4 hours shorter than the former. This next game is the second print run of Mosaic: A Story of Civilization. Players, on their turn, select one of 7 actions to acquire components necessary to build the mosaic that is their civilization. Now, this game was released last year, and the base game is out at retail now. Forbidden Games recently fulfilled a crowdfunding campaign for this print run, along with an expansion called Wars and Disasters. And this expansion adds further variability to the gameplay. For those of you interested in the game, this will be the last chance to get the Colossus edition of the game, as well as the Colossus edition of the Wars and Disasters expansion. Now, the expansion for Mosaic: Wars and Disasters is set to release in April 2023. Check in with your local shop for further release details and pre-orders. The next game has been around since 2011, and it's getting its 3rd edition with a redesign and overhaul of the artwork and layout. In the Castles of Burgundy, players aim to build settlements and powerful castles, practice trade along the river, exploit silver mines, and use the knowledge of travelers. I personally haven't played this game yet, despite its popularity, and I hate to admit it, but the redesign has been more of a draw for me to finally pull the trigger on adding this game to my collection. The Castles of Burgundy Special Edition was given an Awakened Realms deluxeification treatment, and it looks amazing. I really appreciate that they separated the level at which you wanted to deluxeify this game, and it ranges from just the base Special Edition all the way to making everything a miniature or 3D component. Now, from my past experiences of other deluxe games, I don't need everything, so I'll just be getting the base edition. With that said, all of the previous expansions, and I believe a couple of new ones, are included in the box of the base edition. While the delivery of these games are expected in May 2023 to backers, I do expect some retailers to carry this game either at the same time or at a later date. The reason for this being is that all Awakened Realms games so far have made it to retail after their crowdfunding campaigns have delivered to backers. Back around 2019 or 2020, I tried this next game, which is about colonizing and exploring Europa, one of Jupiter's moons, and I instantly fell in love with it. It has dice worker placement, which is one of my favorite mechanisms, combined with a priority system, which essentially means that you use dice to trigger different effects, and the value of your dice will determine the benefit you receive, or the order in which certain effects take place. This mechanic makes the gameplay super tight, and it bumps up the competitiveness. Unfortunately, it was a little difficult to find after it was released at retail back in 2019, which is why when I heard they were coming out with a second edition and new expansion, I instantly backed it on crowdfunding. The Artemis Project from Grand Gamers Guild was an instant hit for me, and I can't wait to try out the expansion, satellites, and commanders. It is expected to be delivered to backers in May 2023, and I also expect it to hit retail a lot sooner than the previous edition did. I keep hearing amazing things about this next game, which is a dice rolling and bag building game set in a warring land of wonder. In Wonderland's War, you attend the Mad Hatter's Tea Party. As you make your way around the table, you can do actions that allow you to muster forces, build towers, and upgrade your leaders. Now, the point of doing this is that eventually this tea party is going to end, and once it's finished, the fight for control of Wonderland begins. Now, Wonderland's War came out last year and is now near impossible to get your hands on. They just finished their second crowdfunding with a reprint and new expansion called Shards of Madness, which is expected to deliver to backers in July 2023. As much as I want the deluxe crowdfunded edition, I'm going to wait for the retail copy, as it's going to be half the price, and I'll be saving on shipping. The last game in this section has been labeled as the best narrative adventure board game ever. Potentially even better than Gloomhaven, the game that has held the #1 spot on the Board Game Geek rankings for the past few years. After hearing that, I definitely had to check it out, especially since I'm actually not that big of a fan of Gloomhaven. This particular narrative adventure board game takes place in a fantasy world where humanity is threatened by something lurking in a forest called the Deepwood. Now, this sounds similar to almost every other trope, but despite that, it has still received high praise for its new and easy to get into gameplay, storytelling, and world building. Oathsworn Into the Deepwood is a crowdfunded game that was delivered to backers in 2022. And they recently finished a reprint crowdfunding campaign that is expected to deliver in October 2023. Now, the publishers say that the game won't be going to retail, but with the volume of backers and the great reviews, I'm willing to bet that they will. And like the previous game, I'm going to wait for this one to hit retail, whether it's this year or sometime down the line. The main reason for this is that I have way too many campaign games, and I need to get through them first. As I said previously, in this final section, I'm going to cover the new. No delays, no additions or new additions and reprints, just the games that are going to be new. Most of these games are going to be games from crowdfunding over the past few years. And I do expect these games to hit retail, either in-store at your friendly local game store, or on the publisher websites. The first game in this section is going to be the second Space 4X game that I mentioned earlier. This Euro take on 4X is closer to Eclipse than it is TI4, but way further along the Euro spectrum. It sounds like it's going to be the most Euro of Euro 4X games, and I want it. Mindclash is known for their amazing production quality and heavy Euros, like Anachrony and Tricarion. Voidfall definitely has all of the hallmarks of a Mindclash game. In Voidfall, the lore and theme seem to be just as important as the mechanics to the gameplay. In the universe of Voidfall, humanity split up into separate houses and spread across the stars. Eventually, they evolved after centuries of adapting to each of their inhabited worlds. One of these houses is a cult that believes in ancient cosmic beings called the Voidborn. We find out that those beings ended up being a parasite-like entity set on corrupting everyone and everything in its path. Not fun. Players select one of the 14 houses, each with different abilities and playstyles, and explore, expand, exploit, and exterminate either competitively or cooperatively as the Voidborn infects and corrupts. Other than the wicked lore and cool artwork, the major appeal for me is that the gameplay is completely deterministic, meaning that everything is on the table for everyone to see. There is no luck, and it's all strategy. But with more strategy comes more analysis paralysis, and the game will probably run longer than some will enjoy. I just wanted to make that apparent. Voidfall is expected to deliver to backers and release in retail in February 2023, and I am ready. The second game in this section is a whole lot lighter both in theme and gameplay from the previous one. Do you like making sandcastles? Or do you just like the idea and much prefer to use wooden blocks that represent these sandcastles? This game is from publisher Brotherwise Games, and it is called Castles by the Sea, where you and other tiny fairy-like folk called shorelings must construct a kingdom for your people, while avoiding nasty hazards like kids playing football and cute dogs that are sniffing around. This game looks like a ton of fun and is relatively light. I also dig the artwork. Castles by the Sea is expected to deliver sometime in the spring of 2023, and I'll be picking it up at retail when it does. This next game is another one about Norse mythology, except the Norse gods are robotic aliens. From Awakened Realms, Lords of Ragnarok, the spiritual successor to Lords of Hellas, is an area control game where it's not just about destroying the other armies. To gain points in favor of the gods, you must also build monuments, hunt monsters, ravage the lands, and gain armies and artifacts. Lords of Hellas has been on my wish list for some time, and I held off on it when I heard that Lords of Ragnarok builds upon those mechanics. Lords of Ragnarok should be delivered in March 2023, and I believe retail shortly after. Ever since I played Dice Throne, I've been enjoying more and more of Roxley's board game quality and artwork. This next game is no exception. In Skyrise, players are architects trying to prove that they can be the greatest builder in a great city floating in the sky. Now this game is a re-implement of a game from 2008 called Metropolis. I'm not sure as to how much the gameplay has changed, but Skyrise has some great new artwork and components to match. Skyrise is expected to be delivered in June 2003, and I'm looking forward to picking this one up at retail. So this next game combines both zombies and superheroes, and it is probably my most anticipated game of all of 2023. Now, I've read the comics, I love the concept and theme, and this is just a game that I'm deeply, deeply excited for. Marvel Zombies, a zombie-side game, is a crowd-funded game that is actually not a crowd-funded game as well. And I'll get into some detail with that. Now, there are 3 versions of this game in terms of core box. First, we have what's called Marvel Zombies, A Hero's Resistance, or just Hero's Resistance. And this game came out in retail. Secondly, we have Marvel Zombies, a zombie-side game, which is the first iteration of the gameplay that has been shown off to backers and just the general market. And the third one is called Marvel Zombies X-Men Resistance, which is similar to Heroes Resistance, but more so with X-Men. Let's take a look and see how these differ a little bit more. Now, for this first one, Heroes Resistance, it actually came out in retail in 2022, shortly after the crowdfunding campaign ended. And it seems like the more accessible version in terms of price and scope. I would also say that this would be the light version of the game, as you play with a smaller map and a few, or just fewer scenarios than the crowdfunded editions. With that said, it is also less than half the price of any of the other two versions of the game, and available now. This version of the game plays similarly to the previous games in this series, or the Zombicide series, where you play as survivors, or Marvel superheroes, and you must fight off zombies and zombified heroes from the universe. Now, that first iteration of this game I was talking about, Marvel Zombies, a Zombicide game, differs from Heroes Resistance in a few ways. For one thing, it has a larger map and many more characters and scenarios to choose from. Players will choose a zombie version of the heroes and must devour other characters on the map to satisfy their hunger. So if you prefer to play as zombies, this would be the version to get. Now, Marvel Zombies X-Men Resistance focuses on players being heroes from the X-Men and introduces new maps and scenarios. It also provides hero alternates for all of the zombies in the previous version, Marvel Zombies, a Zombicide game. So just a quick recap of the three core games. If you're looking to just dip your toes in, get your feet wet a little bit, check out Heroes Resistance. Not only is it a bit of a lighter version of the game, if you're not too sure if you like it or not, it's also less than half of the price of the two other sets individually. And it's also at retail now. If you're looking to add more characters with a similar feel to Heroes Resistance, check out X-Men Resistance, which is releasing June 2023. And if you're looking to just tear some stuff up, be zombies, play as zombie versions of the heroes that you like, check out the first iteration, Marvel Zombies, a Zombicide game, which is releasing to backers now, and some of your retailers should have them in stock. Now, on the opposite side of that, I have backed the game, but through a retailer, and I backed the whole thing. I pretty much went all in on this game, including the other expansions that add the Fantastic Four, we've got the Guardians of the Galaxy, Hydra units, and my most anticipated expansion, the Sinister Six. Now, the Sinister Six expansion adds or allows you to face each other, essentially. So you and a group of teammates can be the heroes, and another group of you can be the zombie version of those heroes, and face each other. And that sounds fun to me. Now, because I went through a retailer, I won't be getting this game until maybe June of 2023, when the second wave or the X-Men Resistance is expected to come out. And I don't mind. I can wait. Spoiler alert, War of the Ring is probably my #1 game of all time. And the 2019 remake of Dune is probably in my top 20. This next game shares the DNA from both games, both in design and in IP. When I heard that Marco Maggi and Francesco Nepatello, two of the designers of War of the Ring, were involved in the game from the Dune IP, I knew I was going all in. In Dune War of Arrakis, you play one of two sides for control of the planet and its resources, a la War of the Ring mechanics. Now, I'm interested to see how the game improves upon the design of its 10-year-old predecessor. But one thing I'm skeptical about, and probably the only thing, is its listed 2 to 4 player count. We all know that War of the Ring is best played with 2 players, as more than 2 can interfere with game meta and prolong the playtime. With that said though, this new solo mode has me intrigued. If you're unfamiliar with the Dune IP, then I definitely recommend reading the first novel. There is so much lore that I don't even know where to begin to explain it all. In terms of gameplay, one side will control 2 houses, Atreides and Fremen, and the other side, the other 2 houses, Harkonnen and the Emperor. If you've been looking for a dudes on a map head-to-head war game with the Dune IP, this is the one to get. With that said, if you have a party of 6 who are all interested in Dune, check out the 2019 version of the Dune board game from Gale Force 9. It's a remake from the original game from 1979, and it's epic. Dune War of Arrakis will be delivered to backers in October 2023, and I definitely expect it to hit retail. If it's a witch, it burns. If it burns, it's made out of wood. If it's made out of wood, it floats on water. What else floats on water? Ducks. So if it weighs the same as ducks, it's a piece of wood. Wait. And then, if it weighs the same as a duck, it's a witch. So wood equals duck equals witch. If you don't understand the reference I'm trying to paraphrase here, then you are the child of an elderberry smelling hamster. So this next game is an RPG, or it's not an RPG, not filled with satirical humor and content. Monty Python's co-curricular medieval reenactment program is not an RPG game from creators Exalted Funeral. Within this book, you'll be able to recreate or reenact some of your favorite scenes and become some of your favorite characters from the Monty Python universe. Now, it's expected to deliver in October of 2023, and I'm not too sure if this one will make it to retail, but you should be able to get it on Exalted Funeral's website. If you're watching this close to the time that this video releases, then you might actually also be able to get the extra bits, including the game, that were available during its crowdfunding campaign. Some of these bits include your very own set of coconut dice rollers and a cow catapulting game called Fichez la Vache. This game screams all types of silly, and I cannot wait. This next game has been referred to as the potential spiritual successor to the hit Euro, The Red Cathedral. Instead of trying to build St. Basil's Cathedral in Moscow, you will have to gain the most influence within the walls of the Himeji Castle of the Hyogo Prefecture of Japan. Here is a small introduction to the game from the designers. The heron flies over the Himeji sky, while the daimyo from the top of the castle watches his servants move. Gardeners tend to the pond where the koi carp live. Warriors stand on guard on the walls, and courtiers crowd the gates, pining for an audience that brings them closer to the innermost circles of the court. When night falls, the lanterns are lit, and the workers return to their clan. In the White Castle, players control a clan and must amass influence in the court, manage resources boldly, and place their workers in the right place at the right time. After taking a look on BGG, according to designer Israel Sendrero, the game is expected to hit retail in October 2023. I'm looking forward to learning more and hearing more about this one. Alright, so we finally made it to the last game in this video. Now this game is a sequel to Awakened Realms' popular game Tainted Grail, which is set in the Avalon or King Arthur universe. More of an alternate dark version to the game. Tainted Grail, Kings of Ruin is a standalone sequel that tells the story of the Avalonians that were separated from King Arthur when Avalon fell. Now, we're still in the same world where a dark mist known as the Weirdness has enveloped the land, and it mutates and changes any and all that enter it. This sequel looks to improve and streamline the gameplay from its predecessor, Tainted Grail Fall of Avalon. And based on recent reviews, Kings of Ruin seems easier to get into and provides some newer mechanics. The crowdfunding campaign also mentioned that some streamlining of the rules for the first game will also be made. Both the Kings of Ruin and the updated version of Fall of Avalon are expected to be delivered in December 2023. Well, that's it. Those are my 23 most anticipated games of 2023. Throughout the video, you'll notice me making reference to purchasing games at retail instead of crowdfunding. Now, if you're interested to hear more about the reasons why, I'll be posting a video that you can check out up here about the reasons why I won't be backing games in 2023. If you can't find the video at the time that you're watching this, it means I haven't posted it as of yet. But please hit that bell button to be notified when it comes out. I'll make sure to post it as soon as I can. And before I leave, I'd just like to give a big shout out to all of my new subscribers. I'm a fairly new channel, and I thank you very much for your support. With that, let me know what your most anticipated games are in 2023. I'm always excited to hear what your thoughts and opinions are. Take care, everyone, and don't forget to play some games.